Welcome to Core Insight Channel, the health and self-improvement channel that improves your life. In this video, you will learn about what obesity is, what causes it and how to treat it. I will dismantle the misleading myths about obesity based on science and the latest studies. The material in this video is sourced from the book, Obesity Code, by Dr. Jason Fung. One of the best books ever written on the subject of health. I will outline the 10 most important topics regarding obesity. Here are 10 of the topics. 1. Not because of dietary fat and not from overeating, so what is the real cause of obesity? 2. Between individual factors, geneticism, and environmental factors, which is most responsible for obesity? 3. Don't focus too much on calorie intake. You must also pay attention to calorie output to avoid obesity. 4. Calorie intake is your body's source of energy and metabolic fuel. Lowering your calorie intake will mess with your body system. 5. The main actors in the main cause of obesity are insulin levels and related hormonal imbalances. 6. Prevent insulin resistance. Give your body time to rest to produce insulin by stopping snacking. 7. There is a strong relationship between obesity and poverty, and the government contributes to this through agricultural subsidies. 8. Dietary fats aren't as bad as you think, but be wary of modified trans fats. 9. Reduce sugar consumption and avoid fructose corn syrup to avoid obesity. 10. Don't be afraid to drink coffee. The positive effects outweigh the negative effects. If you want more details about the 10 topics above, follow me until the end of the video. Don't forget to take your time to subscribe to this channel and like this video. Let's get started. Core Insight 1. Not because of dietary fat and not from overeating, so what is the real cause of obesity? It is a common opinion in this society that the intake of calories in our bodies is the cause of obesity, even though this is not true. This opinion has been formed and instilled in our minds since childhood, so it is difficult for us to refute it, even though the rebuttal comes from experts. This misconception is one of the dozens of stories about the causes of obesity, and it has been rooted in most people's minds since long ago. It happens because of their poor understanding of science. Indeed, the opinion that calories cause obesity seems logical to most people, but this reasonable opinion cannot detect what actually causes obesity. Instead of being able to achieve their ideal body weight, they are trapped in a yo-yo diet cycle. It is for this reason that this video is here before you. I will disassemble this fundamental misconception about what actually causes obesity. Maybe you will be surprised when I say that most of the fat that has been accused of being one of the culprits of obesity is actually a molecule in the human body that is very important for your healthy diet program. It's not without reason that I say this. Everything I present in this video is sourced from various recent studies, including the fact that substances that actively promote obesity are refined sugars and carbohydrates. Of course, you ask how this can happen. Well, this occurs by the mechanism of chemicals made by special cells of the endocrine glands to affect various systems and processes that occur in the body that we know as hormones. And the hormone responsible for the obesity you experience is the hormone insulin. Well, how the mechanism of the insulin hormone creates obesity will be explored in this video, so stay with me until the end. I will discuss various new facts that you never thought of before about the causes of obesity. By knowing these facts, we can be proactive in maintaining health and avoiding obesity. Core Insight 2. Between individual factors, genetics, and environmental factors, which is most responsible for obesity? In 1986, the New England Journal of Medicine released research by Albert J. Stunkard in Denmark. This study revealed whether there is a correlation between the weight of adopted children and their adoptive parents. Suppose there was a correlation. How strong was the correlation? This research departed from the endless debate in our society about what factors shape obesity, whether intrinsic or environmental factors. That was a never-ending debate. You need to know that Denmark is one of the countries with good administrative management regarding adoption. Accuracy of the data is required to produce accurate conclusions. That's why Albert J. Stunkard chose Denmark as the place of this research. So what are the conclusions of this research? It was unexpected. It turned out that the social environment is not the main cause of obesity. In other words, there was no correlation between children's weight and how their adoptive parents raised them. That showed that the way adoptive parents raise their adopted children has almost no effect on whether or not their adopted child's body is fat. The results of this study shocked everyone at the time. The default assumption at that time was that environmental factors were the cause of obesity in most people. So if the adopted child lives in a junk food-oriented family and the child's genetics are not problematic, then the child's chances of becoming obese are very small. In other words, the opinion that states that obesity is formed because of the habit of consuming junk food has been refuted. It is genetic factors that determine whether a person is a fat or not. To strengthen his conclusion, Stunkard tested his new hypothesis. He compared the adopted child's body image with the body image of his biological parents using accurate adoption record data. It turned out that he found a strong positive correlation between the adopted child's body image and the body image of his birth parents. Adopted children born to obese parents have a very high probability of becoming naturally obese. In contrast, children born to thin parents have a very low probability of becoming obese in their foster families. In 1991, Stunkard again strengthened the conclusions of his research by examining how much influence genetic factors had on a person's body image. The study concluded that genetic factors determine about 70% of the causes of people developing obesity. Core Insight 3. Don't focus too much on calorie intake. You also have to pay attention to calorie output to avoid obesity. Would you agree if I say that you have to reduce your calorie intake to lose weight? I'm sure you intuitively agree. That happens because of the acceptance of misinformation that has been rooted in society and has been going on for a long time. Sounds reasonable, but it's not true. Because, based on recent research, obesity and caloric intake do not have a causal relationship. The higher the calorie intake, the higher the probability of obesity. Conversely, the lower the calorie intake, the lower the probability of obesity. This is a growing misconception in our society. Various scientific studies have corrected this misunderstanding. Doctors J.D. Wright and J. Kennedy revealed the relationship between obesity and calorie intake through the Mortality and Morbidity Report published in 2004. The study concluded that an increase in calorie consumption in the United States from 1971 to 2000, with an average increase of 250 calories per person per day, was not the cause of obesity in this country. One more research by Dr. Uri Ladebaum in 2014, published in the American Journal of Medicine, revealed that although the average calorie intake did not increase from 1990 to 2010, obesity continued to grow by 0.37% yearly. That means that there is no causal relationship between the two. What does it mean? You can't just rely on reducing your calorie intake to lose weight. You also have to watch how many calories you burn. So calorie intake must be supported by burning calories in your body. These two things are equally important. When it comes to calories, there's also another misconception about this. Before reading Jason Fung's book, I believed that our body's mechanisms automatically convert the calories we consume into fat. Still, it's not that simple, and there are no studies that confirm this false belief. Our bodies indeed convert calories into fat, but this is only one of the many contributions calories make to our bodies. Not just fat. Calories contribute to the production of heat, protein, bone, muscle tissue, brain, and heart performance. Because of this, obesity is not caused by excessive food consumption but rather improper management of energy use. An athlete, of course, requires calories converted into energy to increase bone and muscle mass. A student needs calories to improve the performance of his brain to concentrate. And someone else out there consumes calories to turn into fat. Unfortunately, our society tends to focus on the last issue of calorie use, fat. This wrong understanding can pose a risk to the health of the body. Instead of losing weight by lowering your calorie intake, you make things worse for your body. Calorie intake and energy expenditure must be balanced. Lack of energy intake causes problems, and vice versa. Excess calorie intake is also the case if it is not accompanied by calorie burning. Some issues from a lack of calories include being underweight, malnutrition, bone fragility, impaired fertility, decreased immunity, a quickly tired body, and so on. In contrast, calorie intake that is not balanced with energy expenditure will cause obesity, stroke, heart disease, high blood pressure, and so on. Core Insight 4. Calorie intake is your body's source of energy and metabolic fuel. Lowering your calorie intake will mess with your body system. Calorie intake and energy expenditure are, in principle, directly proportional. Ideally, the more calories you eat, the more energy you expend, and the fewer calories you take in, the less energy you expend. Imagine if you are used to eating 3 times a day with a particular portion of food. From this diet, energy is formed that you use to support your entire daily activity routine. All went normally. Then suddenly, you only eat 2 times a day, and your portions are drastically reduced while you continue to carry out your usual activity routine. What will happen? Of course, you will be weak, quickly tired, and less passionate. By drastically reducing the portion of food you eat, your body, through specific mechanisms, will reduce overall energy expenditure. Now let's get into the weight loss problem concerning calorie intake. I will refer to research conducted in 1919 at the Carnegie Institute in Washington, D.C. The researchers wanted to know what effect the participants' bodies would have if they reduced their calorie intake in their diet. Participants underwent a stricter diet than usual by reducing their calorie intake by 30% so that their daily calorie intake was between 1,400 to 2,100 calories. It turned out that a reduced calorie intake in their new diet did not result in significant weight loss. What actually decreased was the energy expenditure by 30%, down from 3,000 to 1,960 calories a day. On a percentage basis, this decrease was proportional to their reduced calorie intake. From this research, we can also conclude that reducing calorie intake means cutting the body's metabolic rate, which impacts reducing the energy expended by the body. This mechanism risks the emergence of adverse effects on other body functions. The body system is not working as it should. That is evidenced by Ansel Keys, a doctor who lives in Minnesota. In 1945, he conducted research inspired by the acute famine problem that occurred in the post-war years, which at the time attracted the attention of governments and scientists. Keys wanted to know whether drastically reducing calorie intake would make his participants lose weight. Keys' initial assumption was yes, reducing calorie intake results in weight loss. It turned out that the result of his research showed things different from the initial assumption. Instead of losing weight, the participants experienced constant complaints such as cold, slowed heart rate, difficulty concentrating, and being easily lethargic. Their drastically reduced calorie intake caused these complaints. As I mentioned earlier, reducing calories cuts the metabolic rate, and then when the body is deprived of calories, other body functions will be messed up. Metabolic rate regulates heat, heart rate, and brain performance, so if this is not normal, then complaints will arise. The conclusion is that reducing calorie intake is not the right solution for losing weight. The main suspect in the problem of obesity is not calorie intake. Calorie intake is not as bad as you think. So who is to blame for obesity? You will get the answer in the next minute. Core Insight 5. The main actors in the main cause of obesity are insulin levels and related hormonal imbalances. What do most people say about the most effective way to gain weight? Sure, eat a lot. But there are quicker, easier, and more effective ways if you really want to gain weight. Inject the hormone insulin into your body. That is the leading actor in the main causes of obesity: insulin and related hormone imbalances. If you want to be fat, then increase insulin levels in your body. You do not have to consciously inject the hormone insulin into your body because your body naturally produces this hormone without you knowing it. I just want to point out that insulin is the leading cause of obesity. Not making it up, this is proven by research conducted by L.C. Kong in 2013. Kong revealed that about 75% of all weight loss efforts are clearly marked by a decrease in insulin levels in the body. In his research, Kong gave participants drugs that can increase and lower insulin levels. As a result, there was an increase in the body weight of those given drugs that could increase insulin levels. In contrast, weight loss was experienced by those who took drugs that could lower insulin levels. Hormones are chemical substances that function to send messages throughout the body. Hormones spread throughout the body through the blood vessels as messages as to what each organ should do. Hormones are vital. Just a tiny amount of change can affect the whole body system. Therefore, it is crucial to maintain the balance of hormones in our bodies. There are more than 50 hormones in our bodies, two of which we are currently focusing on are insulin and leptin. Based on the definition and function, within the framework of the discussion of obesity, it can also be said that hormones are substances behind feelings of hunger and satiety. The hormone ghrelin sends a message to you that you are feeling hungry. On the other hand, when you feel full enough, that feeling is actually controlled by a hormone called leptin. Now the insulin hormone produced by the pancreas enters between these two gaps because it will naturally be released by the pancreas when we eat. When the amount of insulin released is more than what it should be and enters your system, the hormone balance does not work correctly. This hormonal imbalance makes it difficult for your body to stop eating. How did it happen? This question has been answered by Robert Lustig, an endocrinologist and obesity expert based in California. He expressed the opinion that insulin makes leptin function not run normally. Here's the explanation according to Lustig. As we know, insulin is released by the pancreas when you eat, which means insulin levels in your body increase. Meanwhile, your leptin hormone is working when you decide to stop eating. Levels of leptin hormone increase after you eat and send a message to your brain that you are full. The same is true when you are on a weight loss program. Normally, when you gain weight and your body fat increases, the levels of leptin in your body immediately suppress appetite by signaling to your brain that it is not time for you to eat. However, there is an abnormal situation when you see an obese person. Often, we find the opposite. When they finish eating, their leptin levels decrease, so this hormone fails to suppress their appetite, which means they continue to feel hungry. This happens because high insulin levels interfere with the work of the hormone leptin. This hormonal imbalance results in the absence of a natural feedback mechanism that stops them from continuing to eat. Even their leptin levels remained low even though their body fat levels increased. That is the point of Lustig's opinion that the insulin released by the pancreas when we eat makes leptin not function normally. Lustig's hypothesis that insulin may be associated with obesity is common sense but still needs to be validated with solid research evidence. Then what causes insulin levels to increase above ideal conditions? We will discuss it after this. Core Insight 6. Prevent insulin resistance. Give your body time to rest to produce insulin by stopping snacking. Many people succeed on strict diets, but the effects don't last long. They can lose weight drastically but quickly and repeatedly return to their original weight position. This condition is like an endless cycle of weight loss and gain, leaving them frustrated and confused about what really happened to their bodies. This condition is known as the yo-yo diet. When you play with the yo-yo, you lower it and then quickly raise it. That's why this condition is called the yo-yo diet. Oprah Winfrey has experienced this condition. In 1988, on a television show, Saturday Night Live, he parodied his success in losing 67 pounds. She wore blue Calvin Klein jeans in size 10 and rode a wagon full of fat, representing his lost weight. In 2005, recalling the parody, she said, "I literally starved myself for 4 months, no food. 2 hours after the show, I started eating to celebrate. Of course, within 2 days the jeans no longer fit." Back again to their confusion. What really happened to their bodies? Why is dieting so difficult? In his book, Obesity Code, Jason Fung answers with a different perspective than most nutritionists do. According to Fung, the actor most responsible for their failure is high insulin levels, which lead to insulin resistance. Insulin is one of the most important natural hormones in the human body. The pancreas produces this hormone. When we eat foods that contain carbohydrates and sugar, the pancreas releases the hormone insulin. The hormone insulin plays a role in converting sugar into energy and is distributed throughout the body. This hormone also helps the body store energy. In short, insulin is a hormone that controls blood sugar levels. This hormone must be stable. Otherwise, it will cause various health problems. The more you consume foods with high sugar content, the harder the performance of the pancreas to produce the hormone insulin. As a result, your body's cells gradually become no longer responsive to insulin hormone receptors. In other words, your cells eventually become insulin resistant. When this resistance occurs, insulin can no longer take sugar molecules in the blood in the ideal amount. It can only accept and convert them into energy in small amounts to be distributed to body cells. You will also continue to feel hungry, and in the end, you will continue to gain weight. This mechanism is the reason why people with insulin resistance find it difficult to lose weight sustainably and take longer. This condition often makes them give in to their body's desire to be fed. Then how do we keep insulin levels in ideal conditions? Core Insight 7. There is a strong relationship between obesity and poverty, and the government contributes to this through agricultural subsidies. In the past, fat people were seen as rich, whereas thin people were associated with poverty. This view is quite logical because people who suffered from malnutrition must have come from those in the poorest class. But over time, this view has changed places in social life in this modern era. No longer seen as a malnourished person, a thin or slim body shape is something people want. On the other hand, obesity tends to be seen as having a strong correlation with poverty. That is a fact. How could this happen? We can take this fact from the life of the Pima people, Native Americans who mainly live in the southwestern American states such as Arizona. Based on historical evidence, in the 19th century, the Pima people used to live as farmers and hunters who were strong and reliable. However, their pattern of life gradually began to change since the invaders settled on their land and disturbed their ecosystem and way of life. They were forced to adapt to their new life. Their cultural values and life habits have been changed, including their diet. They suddenly consumed white sugar and refined carbohydrates such as wheat and corn as their staple food, whereas previously, these foods were only found in pasta and cereals. Low price and ease of storing were the reasons. They were increasingly dependent on these foods. Changes in their diet caused a worrying condition, namely, 50% of all adults suffered from obesity. Their obesity condition was not surprising, considering that their staple food was the main cause of insulin resistance. In the United States, especially in the least affluent states like Mississippi, People living in marginalized communities and groups depend on cheap foods like sugar, corn, and wheat to survive. These foodstuffs become cheaper than alternative foods that are more nutritious, such as vegetables. That is because the U.S. government allocates subsidies to corn production by 29% and subsidies to sustain the livelihoods of wheat farmers by 12%. Core Insight 8. Dietary fats aren't as bad as you might think, but be wary of modified trans fats. In the second half of the 20th century, obesity as a health problem received special attention. According to experts and ordinary people's assumptions, too many foods that contain fat are the leading cause of people becoming fat. This theory, which seems plausible, has been refuted by various studies. The theory states that dietary fat is unhealthy as a false theory. In fact, most dietary fats are not as bad as they have long assumed, so it would be inappropriate to accuse them of being the cause of obesity. This fact was evidenced by a study conducted by Harvard scientists in Framingham, Massachusetts. Starting from the theory that there is a correlation between heart disease and high cholesterol, the researchers tried to find out more about what causes cholesterol levels to increase. They hypothesized that dietary fat is a cause of increased cholesterol levels. This study concluded that there was no correlation between eating large amounts of fatty foods and increasing cholesterol levels. This conclusion broke their initial hypothesis. Surprisingly, they seemed to refute the results of their research. They tended to validate their original hypothesis, blaming dietary fat as the cause of elevated cholesterol levels. It's not just the Harvard researchers, even when a group of other researchers also showed the same attitude. They published a paper in the New England Journal of Medicine in 1981 showing little or no correlation and tended to reject their results. Their attitude was caused by the assumption that has been deeply rooted in society that dietary fat is unhealthy and causes obesity. Researchers today are starting to believe the results of previous studies even though they find it difficult to accept that dietary fat is not the cause of health problems and obesity. But you should be wary. Even though this theory is true, you can't just eat fatty foods without worrying about your health. You need to know that there are different types of dietary fat, one of which you should focus on is modified trans fat. Avoiding this type of fat would be best because it harms your health. What are modified trans fats? Modified trans fats are polyunsaturated fats that are artificially hydrogenated to extend shelf life and prevent them from going rancid. As you probably know, saturated fats have hydrogen-rich molecules that prevent them from going rancid. On the other hand, polyunsaturated fats go rancid faster and have a short shelf life. Polyunsaturated fats generally come from vegetable oils such as margarine. Therefore, factories that produce polyunsaturated fat foodstuffs carry out a hydrogenation process to prevent them from going rancid quickly and having a long shelf life. These are called modified trans fats. Although there are many benefits, we need to be vigilant. Various studies have shown that modified trans fats can increase bad cholesterol and suppress good cholesterol. The follow-up study also confirmed previous conclusions that modified trans fats increased the risk of heart disease by 23% for every 2% increase in fat consumption. Core Insight 9. Reduce sugar consumption and avoid fructose corn syrup if you want to avoid obesity.
We have learned a lot of new things that change our paradigm about what actually causes obesity. So far, many people, including us, think that dietary fat is the culprit that causes obesity, but it's not. So what should you eat and avoid? Everything I've said from the start of this video up to this point boils down to one suspected cause of obesity. It is sugar. The sweet taste makes you addicted, but you need to be aware of the dangers that will be inflicted on your health. So be wise in consuming it, and reduce sugar intake so that your body avoids the risk of obesity. You need to know how dangerous it is to consume excess sugar, and how it can happen. Check out the following explanation. The more sugar intake that enters the digestive system, the more glucose levels flow in the blood. As a result, the body responds by producing the hormone insulin in the pancreas. Insulin is responsible for taking glucose from the blood and then delivering it to various body cells to be converted into energy. As previously described, increased insulin levels can cause insulin resistance, especially in your liver. Why liver? That's because sugar or sucrose contains something called fructose, a type of sugar that only the liver can absorb. The performance of your liver will be heavier if you consume large amounts of fructose. The liver will convert the excess fructose into fat. This mechanism can ultimately increase the risk of insulin resistance and interfere with healthy digestive function. Many food products taste sweet around us, and you must be careful. Because in general, these products contain fructose corn syrup which can harm your body, especially your liver. This fructose corn syrup is much worse than sugar. Therefore, be careful when you take food and beverage products from supermarket shelves, and pay attention to the nutritional information label whether there is a high fructose corn syrup content. If there is, you better put it back and try switching to a vegetable and fruit rack.
Core Insight 10. Don't be afraid to drink coffee. The positive effects outweigh the negative effects. Many people avoid drinking coffee. They argue that the caffeine content in coffee can negatively affect their health. In fact, according to a study conducted in 2005 and published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, coffee has various properties that cannot be underestimated. Coffee contains substances rich in antioxidants that help slow the aging process in cells, and coffee also contains magnesium which is good for bones and the heart. The results of research conducted in 2008 and 2012 also revealed that coffee is also beneficial in reducing the risk of type 2 diabetes, Alzheimer's, and Parkinson's disease. Before I end this video, I conclude the whole content of this video as follows. Final summary. 1. Reducing calorie intake is not an effective way to avoid obesity. 2. Carbohydrates and sugar are the biggest contributors to obesity, so reduce them now. 3. Obesity is actually more influenced by genetic factors related to insulin levels than external factors. 4. The food industry, with products containing modified trans fats and fructose corn syrup, is partly responsible for the increase in obesity. 5. High insulin levels cause insulin resistance and result in uncontrolled blood sugar levels, which causes obesity. 6. Avoid snacking between meals to give your body a break to produce insulin. 7. Fasting is an effective way to suppress insulin levels, but ensure to stay hydrated with a liquid breakfast and drink enough water. 8. Reduce carbohydrates and sugar. Multiply the consumption of high-protein foods and nutritious vegetables. Our journey has finally come to a close. I hope this video has helped you better comprehend the book's ideas. I urge you to pick up a copy of this book if you haven't already done. Jason Fung's anecdotes and examples will help you learn more deeply. You'll be able to alter your perspective on obesity. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.